Dr Alex Allinson, Treasury Minister.
Dr Allinson, obviously we've got the government conference coming up next week.
Yep.
Start the very simple thing of why should people care? Why should they attend?
Yeah. Democracy is all about engagement. And it's two-way engagement, genuinely. Now, what we're doing at the Government Conference is getting all the senior ministers there to talk about three key themes this year. So we've got education skills, we've got housing and infrastructure, and we've got budgets and money. Now, last year was the first time we did this. We set out an ambitious project. We talked about the economic strategy. This is a chance to say what we've actually done in the last 12 months. Why should people come to it? They don't have to. It's completely voluntary and completely free. But if people want to engage with government, this is an ideal chance of doing it. We do engagement and consultation right the way through the year, but there are very few occasions where you get the Chief Minister, the Health and Social Care Minister, and the Treasury Minister up on the stage in a big hall, and you can ask them almost any question you want for free. And I think this is a way that we're trying to be more open and honest, but also listen as well. Now, I know that's a typical cliche for politicians, but we are there to listen. There's lots of workshops going on where it's not just about government. We've got the private sector, the third sector there. There's workshops for small businesses. And this year, one of the key things is also the youth conference going on the Wednesday morning.
Just obviously, say about learning and listening, what has changed from last year, which, for want of a better word, was presented in an interesting way? It was the first year, so it was slightly. What has changed this year that people will notice?
We've changed the structure of it. So one of the comments from last year was it was 2 full days, morning, noon and night, and people couldn't spend that amount of time. It was also during the week, and so what we've done is try to have more in the evening for people who are working, also have some breakfast sessions as well, and a lunchtime session if people are available, make it more flexible. The main thing is the youth involvement as well, because it was quite obvious last year that although we had a couple of sixth formers coming in, it wasn't on their agenda, but we really want to hear what they have to say and what their priorities are. The other change this year is having far more question and answer sessions, so we can have that two-way conversation rather than just death by PowerPoint, but still sticking to some of the format in terms of getting overseas speakers across. This isn't just about government, it's also giving a perspective on what government is doing from people from the UK, from the private sector as well.
And just on that, obviously, you see conferences in the UK, the party conference system in the UK has changed a lot. It's not the voting on policies it once was. This isn't like that either. This is effectively question and answer, as you're saying. But for people who want to say, well, how can I actually affect government policy, can you actually see a situation where something does come out of this? If people say, for example, I don't want a wind turbine built in the south of the island.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, again, the government conference is a one-off event, but right the way through the year, we've got loads of online consultations. Right at the start of this administration with the Island Plan, we went round all sorts of areas on the island, asking people what they thought should be in there, what they thought shouldn't be. So it's a continual process. This isn't a once-a-year party conference. When we're presenting the various policies, part of it is showing what we've done over the last 12 months, part of it is saying what we're planning to do, and we are asking for that feedback. So you talked about wind turbines. Manx Utilities will be doing a presentation there. Now what they'll be setting out is their proposals, but also the process that it has to undergo, which includes planning, includes environmental assessments, the whole works. So none of these are done deals, but what we're trying to present is that conversation, that process, explain to people that although they may read something on your website about a decision being made, there is a structure about how that decision has been reached.
You said obviously you'll be appearing live on stage with your support acts.
Well, actually, no. It's a one-man show, so it's not quite stand-up, although it could turn out to be. But it's the equivalent of having Jeremy Hunt on the stage at the Royal Albert Hall, having Richie Sunak there. So we've got a 45-minute slot, and I think I'm probably on my own.
And can you give us any hint towards what you're talking about?
From my point of view, we set out a budget in February. It's building on that and saying where we're at now. The world still is quite volatile in terms of the economy, but we know that our inflation rate is coming down. It's now 5.4%. Let's see what the projections are of that. Let's remind people what we did in the budget and what the priorities were in terms of investment in health, and education in particular, but also deal with some of the questions about the health service, about access to dentists, about things like that. So from my point of view, it's how we pay for it, and going forward this year in terms of taxation strategy, Laurie Hooper's going to be talking about social health and social care costs, and also how we in the future look at providing residential and nursing care, which will be a big leap forward, I think. So that there are lots of things there, but each of them has a cost. And my role as Treasury Minister is actually to balance the budget whilst reassuring people that the drawdown on reserves that we were quite honest about in February is the sensible thing to carry on doing, but is sustainable in the long term because of our medium-term financial plan.
You said about budget, and also, again, return to the conference. How much can this play into, because the planning for February's budget would be quite far down the road, I'm assuming, at this point. How much can things like this play into where you're seeing that the public's priorities are versus what perhaps government priorities were last year? Does this give a sounding board for that?
It gives a sense check, I think, which is really important. If one of us stands up and says a policy and gets booed by the entire audience, we're probably going to think again. So it gives a sense check in terms of what we're doing, whether it resonates with people. And you only get to do that by talking to people face to face. Online consultations are great for answering various defined questions, but you can word those in all sorts of different ways. What I really enjoyed about last year's conference was being on stage and being asked questions, but also all the conversations that happened in the hall and in the corridors and waiting to get into the toilets and all over the venue. And that's one of the things, particularly in the youth conference, there will be ministers, politicians milling around there to talk to people in a relaxed way and actually get a feel for what their priorities are. And I think that then needs to determine some of the priorities of government in terms of, we've set out an ambitious Highland plan. What do we really try to push over the next financial year in terms of delivery? Because that's what we're all about. And hopefully at the Government Conference, there will be announcements about what we've delivered on the ambitions names that were set out last year. And if you want to come to the Government Conference, it's this link here.